Economy of Francesco. There are three things that separate us from Jesus: wealth, vanity, and pride. Possessions are so dangerous. They lead you immediately to vanity, and you believe you are important. But when you believe you are important, your head swells and you become lost. More material possessions and greater consumption aren't always or even generally better. A consumer who never feels satisfied with his material life, who always wants more, is not on the path to God. Christian teaching has always been that God made people to have an infinite desire for Him, not to have an insatiable desire for the things of this world. The solution is to turn to the Christian church and to God. Christian spirituality proposes a growth marked by moderation and the capacity to be happy with little. It is a return to that simplicity which allows us to stop and appreciate the small things. Such sobriety, when lived freely and consciously, is liberating.
So that's why chapter 205 says humility. Di ba? Humility. And with humility, that's the path towards Christian life. Okay, next. The pros and cons of capitalism.
La, usbo na sa dato ni.
Kuha lang, number 2 lang. Number 2.
Number 2 lang. O sige. Pro sa capitalism. Pro-capitalism. Because capitalism solves these problems so well, it accelerates technology, technological improvements, eliminates absolute poverty, and generates rising standards of living, life expectancy, education, leisure, and more. The rich have gotten richer, and the poor have also gotten
much
richer because of capitalism. Tama ba yun?
Is it
Anyway.
true?
Of course not.
That's what the capitalists are saying. Okay, let's look at the
yung against capitalism. Because capitalist economies produce so much, external damages often rise as output rises. For example, more automobiles mean more pollution. Because of capitalist economies, unslakable thirst, common pool resources are drained more quickly. For example, better fishing boats and relentless competition mean that there are dwindling stocks of fish in the ocean.
So that's the effect. When you have profit over people and ecology, that's the problem. So dapat people and ecology or nature or creation, people and creation over profit. That's dapat. Okay, let's go to conclusion.
Okay, the conclusion. Pope Francis has a much lower opinion of capitalism and market economies than most economists. He especially emphasizes the problems on the list of capitalism's weaknesses, many of which he has seen firsthand. But most economists would argue that he has some blind spots that lead him to miss or simply ignore many things mentioned on the list of strengths. And this is a loss. Perhaps the most baffling of these blind spots is his contention that levels of poverty, absolute poverty, are not diminishing around the world.
That's true.
Hindi nagkakonti yung mga pobre.
Oh,
In Laudato Si, he speaks of growing poverty
yeah,
and
that's right.
says that the exploitation of the planet has already exceeded acceptable limits, and we still have not solved the problem of poverty.
The planet has already exceeded acceptable limits, and we still have not solved the problem of poverty. Is that right? Yes or no?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
very true.
That is why.
Very
That is
true.
why. That is why Pope Francis says we have to change the system because do we have to wait until we destroy the whole planet until you can say that you have solved poverty? No. Now is the time. Before we go into that destruction of this planet, wherein all of us are, that this is our home. Do we have to destroy our home? Before we destroy our home, now is the time to change this system. We have to change our culture, which is the culture of death, which is the culture of the world. From this culture of death toward the culture of life. Let us change. We have to redirect our goal, our directions. So from culture of death, from this war economy, competition, death, redirect towards life, a culture of life and an economy of life, which is we have to go back to the economy of the Garden of Eden. Okay, continue.
According to economists, however, the numbers simply do not support this position. Branko Milanovic, 2016, has traced out the worldwide income distribution in recent decades as people in countries around the world have used markets to expand trading and as technology, largely developed by the world's profit-driven firms, has spread to poorer countries. His numbers are stunning and show that the whole world is getting richer. More importantly, the stark poverty of the left tail of the worldwide income distribution has fallen substantially. He estimates, for example, that from 1988 to 2008, real incomes of those incredibly poor people living on the fifth percentile of the world's income distribution rose by about 15%, but by 40% at the 10th and the 20th centuries, and by more than half at the 13th to the 50th percentile.
There you go.
Another empirical fact that most economists accept but Pope Francis does not mention is the vast improvement in the quality of the environment in many places throughout the world. For many pollutants, economists have identified a pattern in which emission levels rise as countries begin developing economically, but then peak once the countries pass a middle economic level and begin to fall as they become richer. The good news is that overall levels of pollution now peak at lower levels than in earlier decades, largely because of cleaner technologies developed in the most advanced market economies. But the differences between Francis and most economists, as well as most non-economists, are far greater than these numbers can reconcile. Even if he were to concede that they are correct, his values are simply not aligned with the world's way of thinking. He turns the logic of the world on its head. When someone is given a higher position in the world's eyes, we say, "Oh, that person has been promoted." Yes, that's a lovely phrase, and we in the church should use it. Yes, this person was promoted to the cross.
Suffering.
That person was promoted to humiliation.
Humiliation.
That is true promotion. It is what makes us more like Jesus.
Is it true? That's what the Blessed Mother is saying.
Oh, baliktad
Before
ba?
we discuss,
Baliktad.
di ba?
Baliktad
The
ba?
Blessed Mother says, this is the world. This is what God wants. This is the world and this is what God wants. Either we are now living in this world, but do not be conformed with this world. Because we are for heaven. Our true home is heaven. So that's what the Blessed Mother is saying. Pain and suffering as our daily food. Because these are blessings for us to grow in spirit. Okay, continue.
The golden rule of the economy seems to be, "I will serve you if you pay me, and we both will be better off." But Francis argues that humility is the golden rule. The golden rule becomes, "I will serve you because you are in need." Ah, in this view, if this view is correct, it is not about bettering ourselves in this world. It's about humbling ourselves, recognize, recognizing that we all are lowly, and that true power comes from humility.
What did the Blessed Mother say earlier? Di ba? Suffering, humility,
Daily bread.
and in hiddenness. Be humble. So, I serve you because you are in need. Do we have this kind of attitude? Is this what the businessmen, the economists are doing? Different. Really, when you are in this world, but how about in the spiritual world? So that is why Pope Francis says the poor, the poverty, too much poverty is growing. Poor become poorer and rich become richer. The gap is widening. Can you imagine Oxfam report? The 26 richest people in the world today owns 50% of the world's wealth. Can you imagine? 26 people out of 7.8 million, a billion, out of 7.8 billion people in the world today, only 26 people own 50% of the world's wealth. Can you imagine that? So that's the conclusion. I will serve you because you are in need.